I'm Cole, and I'm joined here today with Brian Hawkins. You might know him as the writer of Black Cotton and Devil's Dominion, and we're here to talk about his new book right after this. So before we get into the book, I know that we are both huge fans of bourbon. So once again, welcome and thanks for coming onto the show. What do you have today?
Oh, so I am on Elijah Craig. Still left over from the weekend. Elijah Craig. One of my favorites, I guess. It's a go-to for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. That is also one of my go-tos. I just took a little sip of this, which I have a Larceny
Larceny.
barrel proof, which is the same family technically as Elijah Craig. So cheers. But we have you here for the real important reason. You have a Kickstarter dropping. It is called
More important
Lunatic.
than bourbon.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But your Kickstarter is dropping. It's the Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet. So for the people who are watching that have not heard of this, do you want to give us the pitch that you would do to sell this book?
Yes, CW's Nancy Drew meets Scream. When a small school for the arts attempts to put on a Shakespeare rendition, their rendition of a Shakespeare play called A Midsummer Night's Dream. The lead actress gets murdered, and the cast and the crew all become suspects. And from there, the small town secrets are revealed. Relationships are in turmoil, and the search for a killer is on.
That is awesome. I love horror movies. I know that we were talking a little bit about horrors right before this.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to show everyone here. This is what the cover looks like. And yeah, that's an awesome cover. I love the pitch. I love this idea. What really made you think of this? I know I was actually looking over the Kickstarter, and you said this is a story you've had for a while. So I assume there's something that brought this to
Yes,
fruition.
absolutely. So the Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet was originally a screenplay, a spec screenplay that I wrote in 2000, in 2001, 2002. And it has had many forms, many versions. And so since undergrad, 2001, 2002, like right before I got out, I've been kind of like revising it. Like I have like 8 different versions of the spec script. And so in the last year and a half, 2 years, I'm like, you know what? I really wanted to tell this story. And I'm like, this will work so well as a comic. And so I began to tweak and revise it, and craft it into a comic. And so the original form of it is not, the original form as a spec is not exactly what it is now. It's evolved as I have evolved. So that's where it started. And it really comes from 2 places. My love of Shakespeare. A Midsummer Night's Dream is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. I remember Professor Bill Griffin, and he was just like, I remember going through that play in that lecture hall in that class, and it was just such an awesome experience. And a lot of it just really stuck with me. And the actual title, The Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet, is actually a line from that play where it speaks about how all of like the Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet, 3 and 1 are really the same. So that plays into the theme of what this story is about. It plays into the theme of who the killer is. And then, I have a love for horror and slasher flicks. So, combine Shakespeare with horror, and it's like the perfect marriage. And we
Yeah,
have
that's awesome.
Lover and the Poet.
You actually have me probably now. I'm intrigued, and I want to go read. Midsummer Night Dream. Actually, one of my favorite bourbons that I bought a bottle that I've been like chasing is called
Mhm.
a Midwinter's Night Dram.
Really?
Yeah, if you've heard of High West, they're out of Utah. They have those very unusual bottles. They're like thin, and they have
Uh-huh.
like a big cork top that almost looks like a champagne top.
Oh man.
But their big
I'm
one
gonna write
is
that
like
down.
double. It's a rye though, and I know you're not a huge rye fan,
Oh, I'm not
but
a
it
rock
and
fan.
it's also a like a weird holiday Christmas bottle. My brother ended up finding it in some like random, you know, small town liquor store. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I'll send you a picture of it on
Okay.
Instagram
Okay.
later
Yeah.
too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Please.
it's a pretty cool bottle. But yeah, you've got me interested in that. But let's show off some of the art here. And
Okay.
speaking of the art, who is the creative team that you have working with you on this
Okay.
one?
Yes. So Marcio Loiser is the artist, and Gabriel Rodon is the colorist, and Francisco Zamora is doing the letters.
Yeah, and I love this this one page that we have here. I know that if you actually go to the Kickstarter itself, people can see a few more panels and extra pages, and there's actually the letterings filled in
Yes.
on that too, which is awesome. But some people don't like to see that, so that's why we'll show them the blank one. I know too, I've personally pledged this, and like the entry level for a physical pledge on this is $5. I think with shipping on top of that, but still,
Yeah.
compared to most Kickstarters, it's very rare that you see one at that price point. So if you're for people that are hesitant, you're not going to break the bank by backing this one.
Not at all. Come on in. Come on, join us.
Yeah, and another thing I think that you're doing here that's pretty cool that I've never seen before. Granted, I am a super backer, so I've backed enough Kickstarters, but I've never seen this before. You are giving away action figures based on trivia questions, right?
Yes, I am. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so like what really drove you to do that? I think it's probably a cool way where people can try and promote the book, but like, what was the thought process of doing something like this as opposed to making these like stretch goals or something like that?
Well, yeah. So I wanted the Kickstarter for LP to be an experience. Like horror to me is an experience. So I wanted the Kickstarter to be an experience. And I wanted there to be a way for us to interact and for us to delve into some horror film history and so forth and so on. So I combined that with my love for action figures and so forth and so on. And so I'm like, you know what? I like few months back, I saw these cool action figures, horror action figures, in the store. I'm like, you know what? That'd be great. Let's do that. Just combine everything. Shakespeare and horror's combining. So let's combine horror and action figures too. Uh, so I came up with the Celebrating Horror giveaway, and I'm already planning for what I want to do for issue 2 and the Celebrating Horror for issue 2 and the memorabilia that's going to come with that. So
That's awesome. I think you might have something that you can
I
show
do. I
possibly.
do. So the first week giveaway, which really already happened, is this Tooney Terrace action figure of Jason. The winner of that is actually backer number 33, Ben Ryan. And so this is being sent out to him this week. So he will be receiving this. Week number 2, we're diving into The Shining.
Oh,
And we
awesome.
have the Grady twins. And so each week, the process is there's a question that relates to that movie and specific to the characters that the action figures represent. And so the backers have to answer that question correctly, post it in the comments, and then I do a drawing based off of their backer number. And whatever number comes up, they get the action figure. And the third and final is one of my favorites. I actually just caught up to the latest version 2018 of Halloween.
That's awesome.
And I love Michael Myers, and so I'm saving Michael Myers for last. He is the last week, and there will be a question pertaining to Halloween, and whoever answers that correctly and name is drawn, or excuse me, backer number is drawn, they will win this Michael Myers action figure, Tooney Terrace.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm definitely going to go for personally. Michael Myers is my favorite.
Yes.
My wife and I actually during quarantine, I'd never seen any of like we both like horror movies, but we've never watched any of the big franchised horror movies. So
Okay.
we went through and we watched every single Halloween movie, and we've gone. I think we've missed like 1 or 2 of the Jason movies because we've just been checking them out from the library, and they didn't have one. And then we kind of got to Nightmare on Elm Street, but we only watched the first one. So, but hey, it's we also watched a bunch of other movies, but Halloween now holds a special place
Oh
in my
yes.
heart. For that.
Oh yes.
I know right before this you mentioned the second issue. How many issues in total is this one going to be?
It's a so the what I want to say is like the first story is 3 issues. What I wanted to do was have a beginning, a middle, and an end because it's horror, and I didn't want to serialize it to the point where it kept going and going and going. One of the main things that I love about horror movies is going through that process and getting to the end and finding out who is the killer or what's really happening or what's the revelation or what is it I'm taking from this, right? So I wanted a beginning, a middle, and end. So it's a 3 issue book story arc. I do have plans for a sequel, and I'm phrasing it as a sequel because what's a horror slasher story without a sequel? So I do have plans for a sequel, but 1, 2, and 3 will finish off this story for sure.
Well, that's awesome. I know that already. I don't know if I mentioned this, but we'll have the link to the Kickstarter below. I know that you had mentioned these action figures. I think you're doing those all live on Instagram. Yes. We'll have your Instagram and Twitter links. And if there's any other links that you want to provide, we'll throw these down below so people can find you. But besides that, is there anything you want to say to wrap this up?
If you are a horror fan, if you're a fan of slasher flicks, comic book enthusiast, Shakespeare lover, then The Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet is definitely a comic book series that is worth checking out. I would love you to check it out. As we're trying to make this a horror experience, not just we do want you to read the book, but we want you to be interactive with us in the process of it being funded, which it already is because it's a low goal. But we want readership, and we want the audience, and we want to interact with you while we tell this story. So, The Lunatic, the Lover, and the Poet.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Brian. I'm Cole.
Hey, I'm Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for getting wrapped up with us.